Good afternoon. My name is David Harper. I'm the Director General of Monitoring and Data Services within the Meteorological Service of Canada, which is a branch of Environment and Climate Change Canada. I'm responsible for leading the collection and management of meteorological, climatological, hydrometric, and environmental data in support of water, weather, and climate services. This includes the management, design, operations, and renewal of the federal upper air, surface, marine, hydrometric, lightning, radar, and satellite receiving station networks. This presentation is a part of a series of engagement sessions led by the federal government as a whole. For the first time that I know of, at least, major EO users within the federal government have come together to change the way we plan, develop, fund, and use EO data within the government. I am pleased to be here this morning on behalf of my other departmental colleagues. I'll provide an overview of the work we have been doing on this over the past year or more. But really, this presentation is intended to open a dialogue with you, the SBEO user community outside the federal government, to understand your needs and expectations for space-based Earth observation in Canada going forward. I would like to start with this impactful video, which sets the stage for my talk and highlights the importance and everyday relevance of space-based Earth observation, or SBEO as we call it.
From space, we see deep into the heart and veins of our ever-changing planet. Pictures of Earth are worth more than 1,000 words. They are the blueprint for our future. To unlock the full potential of space's unique vantage point, we've created powerful tools that gather valuable data that enables farmers to efficiently manage water and fertilizer for stronger food yields, data that scientists use to monitor ticks and mosquitoes that carry harmful diseases, data that first responders use to find the fastest routes to save lives. That's only a glimpse of what we can do today. In the future, when combined with AI and powerful computing, a broader range of space data would generate infinite solutions for Canadians. Imagine a future where we can use space data to better understand and predict the impacts of climate change, like rising sea levels, extreme weather, wildfire risk, and flooding. Measure the health of our forests and create predictive maps of pest damage and burn extent. Produce real-time dynamic navigation routes to protect whales and other endangered species. Ensure security and sovereignty in Canada's vast Arctic. Tomorrow's challenges require investing in innovative solutions today. Earth observation is key to securing economic opportunities and improving the lives of Canadians. Together, we can define Canada's future.
I hope you enjoyed this video. I see it as a good place for us to start. The major SBEO users within the federal government put this together to help explain to our decision makers the important role SBEO can play for Canada going forward. So it's really foundational for the federal SBEO effort, which I'll discuss now. You may recall that the Canadian Space Agency released a new space strategy for Canada in March 2019. The focus of the strategy was on space exploration and led to support for NASA's Lunar Gateway mission to provide opportunities for Canada's robotics industry. EO is an important part of the strategy in terms of ensuring Canada's leadership in acquiring and using space-based data to support science, excellence, innovation, and economic growth. Under this component of the strategy and through this initiative, we are examining how to leverage EO to acquire climate change data, prioritize our future needs, develop our analytical capabilities, and drive the national research agenda, leveraging Earth observation. The field of SBEO is undergoing change and seeing major trends of significance to ongoing government activities. These include big data, a dramatic increase in data users, a shift from raw data streams to value-added applications and services, greater processing potential through machine learning and AI, as well as decreasing timescales for data acquisition and use. Canada needs to respond to 21st century challenges with 21st century tools and build an integrated, space-based Earth observation system to drive innovation, evidence-based decision-making, and better services for Canadians. Global leaders in SBEO have taken a long-term, forward-looking approach to SBEO planning. Europe, through the Copernicus program, has developed and implemented a long-term vision that sees missions, data, and services planned for more than 20 years into the future. The US released its latest decadal survey for SBEO, which sets out plans and priorities to meet long-term needs for SBEO science users with concrete plans for the next 10 years. Australia, while not a large spacefaring nation, will invest up to $12 billion by 2030 in their space sector, largely in their SBEO value chain and private sector capacity. With this, the government of Australia aims to create 20,000 new jobs in the sector over the next decade. In spite of our tremendous capacity and expertise in the EO and data science arena, Canada is in fact lagging behind in terms of developing a long-term investment plan for space-based Earth observation. There have been multiple economic values studies done on SBEO at the national, regional, and global levels, all indicate significant growth over the coming decades. It's time for Canada to catch up. In 2018, the Canadian Space Agency's National Earth Observation Forum, we heard from many of you that the government has an important role in ensuring Canadian scientists and industry have access to key SBEO datasets and related computing capacity. After the forum, key SBEO departments began to meet regularly to better understand how our teams used SBEO, what streams were critical, and importantly, how do we move forward to develop a long-term vision to keep these critical data flowing and where necessary acquire new EO data streams. There was recognition that we need to better monitor and understand Canada's environment, which is changing at a rapid pace. We know we need to secure our access to certain satellites and possibly consider providing our own Canadian data as necessary. And we need to ensure our national security and public safety, particularly in the north, and that SBEO is critical to addressing these needs, among others. In a nutshell, the federal vision for space-based Earth observation aims to ensure that SBEO is fully integrated throughout government and across Canada to provide solutions in pursuit of major national goals and based upon authoritative data for science-based decision-making to benefit Canadians. The vision also recognizes that charting a new course for SBEO to better meet departmental mandates and strengthen our own federal services must also provide a healthy landscape for Canadian companies, researchers, and other levels of government to access EO data, develop solutions, stimulate economic activity, and foster the next generation of world-class experts in all the technologies and sciences related to the field. Our approach to address the country's grand challenges are included on this slide. The grand challenges are sustainable agriculture and food security, healthy Canadians, security, sovereignty and defense, competitive resource sectors, clean water, climate change action, and resilience. Of these, climate change action and resilience is at the front and center for many of our science-based organizations. This is particularly relevant in the Arctic, where the environment is warming at an alarming rate and where the Northwest Passage is expected to open to more traffic in the coming decades. We are proposing that our future planning must consider needs across the full EO value chain. This means not only investing in satellites in the upstream part of the value chain, but also in the ground infrastructure and data storage, cataloging and archiving in the midstream component, as well as the data processing capability and platforms for analytics and the delivery of value-added products and services in the downstream component of the value chain. This downstream portion of the value chain should also include ways to advance research to fully leverage the value of EO data so that we can fully capitalize on upstream investments. We came up with a set of guiding principles that will guide us in the new path forward. Of these, we talk about long-term planning. We want to encourage the GC to move to long-term planning where investments are forecasted over decades instead of years. We are familiar with the long lead time needed for most of the upstream missions and satellites. We need complementarity with ground networks. We recognize the need to ensure that any space-based planning and investment is coherent with ever-expanding, increasingly sophisticated surface monitoring networks. We want the end-to-end perspective, as I mentioned. The whole full value chain requires investment. We talk about a whole government approach as a guiding principle. Departments have committed to pool their resources and expertise to understand our SBEO requirements and where it makes sense to focus on enterprise solutions that avoid duplication and maximize use of EO data, and of course save the taxpayer some money. We talk about commitment to open data as well. This is an important guiding principle. Canada benefits significantly from open data. And the vision recognizes that Canada has not only been a strong proponent of open data, but also has to contribute more to the international community. And of course, a partnership mentality is important as a guiding principle. As a large country with a small population and proportionate tax base, there's perhaps a larger onus to bring our best to the table to develop and deliver on any strategy. This means tapping into our expertise in our universities and private sector companies and creating key partnerships internationally that will help us implement a long-term SBEO strategy for Canada. Just to wrap up here, I want to emphasize that we know that SBEO investments are needed to support Canada's priorities. Ensuring Canada is a leader in SBEO data and technologies will not only help us to respond to challenges related to climate change, water resource management, safety and security, health and food security, but will also create opportunities for our private sector and academia. We as the federal government are in the process of looking at where we can and should prioritize our investments across the full value chain to ensure maximum benefit for Canadians. Going forward, engagements like this are an important step on this new path for SBEO to not only advance federal priorities, but also create the landscape necessary for our larger national SBEO ecosystem to thrive. If you've not already, you can have a look at our SBEO engagement papers that are available online at the link shown here, along with an email address to share your thoughts. Starting last week, in fact, at the Canadian Symposium on Remote Sensing, where my colleague Eric Lubier, the Director General at the Canadian Centre of Mapping and Earth Observation, he gave a similar presentation to this. The SBEO community has started the conversation that needs to take place in order to have a fully comprehensive and informed approach to SBEO in Canada. To get the conversation going, we've prepared 6 questions to guide our discussion. I look forward to a fruitful discussion now and also in the panel discussion that I'll be participating later on today. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen and review this presentation, and I look forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much for a very interesting presentation. Hello. Wonderful. And so I guess we can definitely go ahead. We see that we have a couple of questions coming in. And David, can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Excellent.
So we will go ahead and start with an anonymous question here. Canada has a lot of needs that can benefit from EO systems. How are we promoting the development of HQP to leverage these technologies and to be part of the conversation in their development/deployment to benefit Canadian interests? How does SBEO planning supporting this?
Well, we've really taken an end-to-end perspective with the long-term investment plan, or at least the development of it. So it looked at satellite development, development of our ground infrastructure and data storage, as well as our analytical platforms and the personnel that are required to capitalize on that data. When we think about this, HQP can fit into every part of the stream. But specifically, we really need to grow and evolve our capacity to capitalize on EO data. One way of doing that is making sure that that data is open and available, not only to federal government, but academia and private sector. But we also see investing in both within government and outside government in data scientists to really bring value from the data. That means providing open platforms where academia, private sector, and federal government can work together to produce solutions. So opening up our infrastructure will help create highly qualified personnel. We've also talked about the idea of creating a center of expertise around our supercomputer and developing big data research chairs as well. So we're exploring different options, but that is really at the forefront of our thinking, making sure that we just don't have the infrastructure and the data streams, but the people to capitalize on that. So we envision funding on that side to bring in people both within the government and possibly research grants and contributions down the line to promote a center of expertise and research into data exploitation.
Wonderful. So, I guess continuing, we've got a question from Raymond, and I do apologize if I mispronounced your name. As SAR is getting more and more attention for developing maps where optical data lacked fit, how is federal government planning on improvising RadarSat constellation for the future, considering the recent improvements by Centennial from ESA?
That's a good question. It's a very technical question. We're exploring SAR continuity now. This is part of our investment roadmap. So we're looking at what the next generation would be, whether or not we launch our own constellation again post RCM, or whether we purchase or leverage data streams from other jurisdictions. Remains to be seen. But as we develop the long-term investment roadmap, we're looking at the upstream portion, a slew of missions that we've already prioritized. But we're also looking at data streams from other jurisdictions. So the EU and the Copernicus program, through the United States, Japan. So what we'll do is try to find the right mix and balance of data sources from different vehicles to ensure that we've got the right mix of data that our scientists can capitalize on. One of the things that we do want to do is move towards having a subscription service for imagery. This is, we kind of buy our imagery piecemeal as a federal government, and we're looking to make sure that we've got national coverage of high resolution imagery, which will help support change detection in a whole range to support a whole range of priorities.
Wonderful, thank you. And we've got a question from Denis Ains. So I've actually 3 questions. So to first start off, how do you see the importance of the wet side of geospatial, so-called hydrospatial, in SBEO in Canada and in the world?
The wet side, I'm sure that's a good question, Denis. It's good to hear from you again. Again, what we're doing is looking at a range of our upstream options and satellites, and DFO, Fisheries and Oceans, is a player at the table in terms of developing the investment plan, and many of their interests are being documented and supported to make sure that we've got coverage on the wet side of things and not just terrestrial environments.
So I guess to kind of, I know you partially touched on this. So is there sufficient fusion between geo and hydrospatial data and information?
Is there sufficient? Again, Denis would be the expert on this. I think it can increase on the geospatial side. I know that we've made great strides in developing a marine spatial data infrastructure and the federal geospatial platform to really integrate geospatial data from different federal departments and agencies, as well as provinces and territories, and other feeds to bring that together. But you know, as the principal of the Group on Earth Observations for Canada, this has come up at that forum as well, making sure that there's closer ties between the two, and especially the land-water interface, very important for us.
Wonderful. And the final question that I have from Denis kind of ties into the first one. So given the fact that the Earth is 70% covered by water and Canada has 3 oceans, should we talk of SBEO, space-based Earth and Oceans observation, rather than SBO?
That's an interesting question. I always considered Earth to include the oceans and the terrestrial mass. So I would leave it at Earth, but certainly I get Denis' point in terms of emphasizing the marine environment. It's important, and I think partnerships that the Group on Earth Observations, as well as what we're doing here domestically, are making those links between the International Hydrographic Organization and WMO to make those linkages. When we think about Earth systems modeling, we're already taking great strides from a weather prediction and forecasting and numerical weather prediction. We're making great strides to integrate both terrestrial data and marine data feeds already, but we certainly need to move further, as it'll be critical for climate change modeling.
Wonderful. So I will encourage attendees to feel free to utilize our Q&A. So that is at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions. Following this presentation, feel free to also utilize our Slack channel in order to continue the conversation. But I do know that Dave, you had brought a few questions forward at the end of your presentation in order to continue the conversation. If that's anything that you would like to touch on while we do have some time remaining.
Yeah, I mean, part of what we're doing is through this investment roadmap is making sure that we engage stakeholders, SMEs, industry, academia, and we would like to hear from folks on where they think the priorities should be. We have a sense from a federal government perspective in terms of supporting this government's priorities, but we know that there are other areas of interest and focus that could be brought to light. So I think hearing back from the folks on the phone in terms of where they think some of the priorities are for investments in Canada along the whole value chain. So not just in satellites, but receiving stations, data storage and access, and analytical platforms it would be helpful to hear back from folks on that.
Definitely wonderful. And just to follow up on that, I know that at the end of your presentation, you did include some different ways individuals can communicate in order to share some of that information. So just a note to everybody is I will be posting that information on the Slack channel following this presentation. So if you did not have a chance to jot down, no worries, it will be available afterwards. And we do have an additional question from Blair. Any plans to increase LiDAR coverage across Canada, specifically for creating DEM?
We actually made a commitment at GEO to have national coverage I think it's 2 meters. We through, and in my previous job as director of GeoConnections in the federal geospatial platform, we were actually working with provinces and territories to gather together LiDAR holdings nationally and make them available. I know there will be further investments as we look to make more investments in floodplain mapping as well as part of the government's platform commitment. So I expect an increase in LiDAR coverage and investments, both as part of the SBEO strategy, as well as outside of it to support specific priorities like floodplain mapping. Our hope is that to the extent of possible, we've got a commitment or a guiding principle to make this data open, and I think that's really key, so that not only we can capitalize on the federal government to support our priorities, but other folks can leverage it as well for research and analysis.
Wonderful. And we do have an additional question. So there have been a number of efforts at developing a space strategy for Canada. Are you now consulting on a strategy that will take at least 2 years? And how can we catch up if we keep falling behind?
Well, there is a space strategy that is out now, and it's, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, it largely was to support NASA's Lunar Gateway project with a slated $2 billion investment that focused on robotics. A big component of the space strategy was Earth observation. We're working on developing that now. We've been at it since, I believe, September 2018. My expectation is that it's around the corner. That's my hope anyways. In terms of the investment strategy, we're predicting fall, winter to have it in place. The difficult thing, I think, will bring it to fruition in kind of a COVID era with a government that's making many investments across the board. So it'll depend on how they prioritize their investments and whether they want to promote this. But in my mind, I think it's extremely important for Canada. So my hope was that this year that it would go to decision makers to sort out whether or not we proceed with the strategy and funding different components of it. So I don't think it's 2 years away.
Okay, wonderful. So for the time being, I don't see any additional questions. Are there any final remarks or anything that you would like to add prior to the end of the session?
No, I just encourage people to, again, for the information provided at the end of the presentation, have a look at the questions. Feel free to contact us at that email. We're really looking forward to feedback, and this is just the start of our engagement on the investment plan, and we look forward to meeting you virtually to carry on the discussion.
Wonderful. So thank you everybody for joining us for the session, and thank you very much for speaking. We really do appreciate and you taking the time out of your busy schedule. So we will be continuing our sessions in about a half hour's time in both rooms. So please feel free to stick in this one if you would like, or hop onto our other Zoom room, which can be accessed directly through our website. And keep an eye on that Slack channel, because I will be sharing the information that was previously mentioned at the beginning of, or towards the end of the session. So thank you very, very much, and we will see you all shortly.
Perfect. Thank you.